Okay, in this lecture, we're going to go through the specific types of epithelial tissue. So in the last lecture, we just talked about epithelial tissue in general, and we talked about the fact that you're going to find it lining it's all your membranes in your body. So any cavity is going to be lined, any opening is going to be lined with epithelium. Epithelial tissue also has the important job of being glandular. So all of your glands are going to be made of epithelial tissue, and they're either going to secrete or excrete some form of a substance. It could be something like saliva, or it could be something like a hormone, depending on if we're talking about excretion or secretion. And they're there for protection. So I'm going to go through the individual types. If you want to follow along with that nifty chart I gave you, that chart you can fill in the function of the tissue, where it's found, and the basic information. So let's get started. I'll see how many I get through. I might stop this and then make it into 2 lectures, depending on how long it takes. Okay, so the first type of epithelial tissue is going to be what we call simple squamous. So simple meaning a single layer, and squamous meaning flattened cells. So these are going to be thin and flattened cells, a single layer thin. So we're talking about extremely thin. And what's the job of your simple squamous tissue? It is exactly the same job that your screens have in your windows, right? So if you go right now to your windows and open them up, you probably have a screen there as well. So you open up the window and that screen exists because it lets air in and out, but it prevents bugs from flying in or any particles you don't want in your room. Well, our lungs and our capillaries are the areas of our system where blood is able to drop off and pick up oxygen and carbon dioxide. So we need some way for the gases to get in and out into the body, but we don't want things that we don't want getting in, like pathogens or any particles that may be in your system. So that is going to be your simple squamous. So just to give you a reference point, think of it this way, right? So if this is going to be your blood vessel, so you have your blood vessels coming from your heart, so you have your arteries. At a certain point, they get extremely thin, and they form what are called capillaries. And the capillaries meet up with the veins. So basically this would be oxygenated blood, and then at a certain point they meet up with the veins, which would be picking up the dropping off the deoxygenated blood to bring back to the heart. So these would be your capillaries here. This is called a capillary bed. So this would have oxygen in it, and what ends up happening is the blood comes in here and then it drops off the oxygen, right? And it picks up the carbon dioxide from your tissues, and then that carbon dioxide gets brought to your lungs to have that transition again. So this tissue here, these capillaries have that very thin single layer of simple squamous. It is also what makes up the alveoli, or the sacs in your lungs. So your lungs, if you were to look, if this was a bronchiole here, if this was air coming in from the outside, it ends in these little branches, and at the end of each branch is this little thing called an alveoli, which is essentially, it looks like a cauliflower or broccoli head, right? That is where the blood comes in, or the oxygen comes in, and then your blood vessels are going to be around it, and then the oxygen from the air gets dropped off here. So this tissue here is also going to be simple squamous. So simple squamous is going to be found in the air sacs of your lungs. It's also going to be found in your capillaries, and it has the extremely important job of filtering air. It allows for diffusion and filtration. So think of a screen in a window, and if you take a look at this image here, what you're seeing is, imagine if you're looking down on it. So it's a flat, it's like saran wrap, right? Thin layer. So this would be flattened out, and you can see this is the individual cell, that's the nucleus, and they're so thin that air can get in and out. The next one is simple cuboidal. So simple cuboidal is going to be a single layer of cuboidal cells, and these are going to be found in all of your glands. So a follicle is just a fancy word for a tube. So what you're seeing here is an image of like a gland. I don't know what gland it is. It could be any gland in the body. And your glands are full of tubes, and around those tubes are going to be these cells, this single layer of cuboidal cells. So this would be an opening. So just to give you a reference point, imagine a garden hose, right? This would be if it was a cut. So this would be cutting it. Oops. This would be cutting it, and you're looking into the tube. So this would be a transverse cut, cutting it down the middle so we can look into the tube. So these circles would be coming at you as if they were a garden hose or a tunnel. So what ends up happening is these cells produce a secretion. It could be something like a hormone. It could be something like sweat, like I said before. but they are going to secrete what they produce into these openings. So basically, you're going to find these in follicles of the thyroid gland, in your kidneys, and in certain glands. And they are used for secretion and absorption. So in some places, they're for secreting substances that are going to go into the body. Like, for example, your adrenal glands are going to look like this. And then these cells would produce adrenaline, and they would go into these tubes, and that would carry it to where it needs to go. These are also found in areas that need absorption. So in some cases, they act like a sponge and they absorb. So in either case, they absorb or they secrete, and they're going to be found in your glands of the body, and they're going to be lining the tubes. So this would be, like I said, an example of a gland, and it's a single layer of cube-shaped cells. That's simple cuboidal. Simple columnar is a little more involved, so we're going to take another moment on this one. So simple columnar is a single layer of column-shaped cells. So if you take a look at this image here, you can really see, I'm going to get my pointer here, you can see this would be the layer of cells. So this would be your basement membrane here. This would be the apical surface, the open area. This is your digestive tract. So this would be an image of your intestines. So this is what you'd be seeing here. This would be the basement membrane here and the basement membrane here, and this would be the connective tissue. So if you remember, I kind of compared it to an Oreo cookie where you have the cookie on the outside and the cream in the middle is the connective tissue. This is a great example of that. This would be the cookie here, this would be the cookie here, and then the cream in the middle is the connective tissue. So what is going on here with these cells? Well, these cells are essentially going to be found mainly in your digestive tract. And they are there for protection, but they're mainly there for absorption. And they have two things that I want to talk about that make them special. So I'm going to draw a picture here. We'll see how this goes. Okay, so our simple columnar cells, so let's say this is your digestive tract here. You have these cells, individual cells, which are going to be simple columnar. And you'll notice I'm drawing them like they have crowns on top. That is one of the characteristics that make these cells unique. So that's probably enough for right now. We have our nuclei in here. Those are the nuclei. Now below here, we have our blood vessels, right? So these are the blood vessels. These are the blood vessels which are going to be traveling below your intestinal tract. And then this would be your intestinal tract here, where food would be traveling through, right? So food would be coming through here. And as you break down the food, you want to absorb it into the blood vessel to carry it where it needs to go. So let's talk about a couple of these characteristics that make simple columnar unique. They have these little structures that look like fingers, which are called microvilli, which means little fingers, right? And they act in a very important role. I'm going to ask this question throughout this class, and it's always going to have the same answer. Anytime you have folds, so for example, the brain has folds in it. If you look at, when we get to the neurons, the part of the cell which contacts the neuron has folds in it. These are folds. So why are there folds here? Those folds provide for more surface area. Anytime you have folds, that allows for more surface area, and it allows for more absorption. So for example, if I have a cell that looks like this, and I have a cell that looks like this, they're the same size, right? Roughly, but the difference is this has this much surface area there. This one has all this extra surface area. So that just allows for extra absorption. So that is one thing that makes simple columnar special. The second thing is they have these hairs, and those hairs are called cilia. So these hairs would be sticking up, and what they do is they help push the food along. So cilia are like little hairs coming off of the cell, and they allow the cells to push along the substances that are being passed along through the digestive tract. So on your charts, it says special features. So for simple columnar, special features are going to be the microvilli and then the cilia, which allow, but the main thing is going to be the microvilli, which help with absorption. And they also have cilia here, which help protect. We'll do one more. The last one's going to be stratified squamous. And stratified squamous is multiple layers of squamous, which is going to be flattened cells. This is going to make up one specific part of your body, and that is going to be your epidermis, okay? And any surface that is exposed to the external environment, like the inside of your ears, the inside of your nostrils, your inside of your mouth, okay? Anything that's to the open air, that is going to be made up of the stratified squamous. So let's just talk about this for a minute. If you take a look here, you can see a distinct line, right? That line separates the epithelial, which is this purple up top, and then the connective is down here. So epithelial is here, connective is here. One thing you'll notice is as you get farther away, these cells start to look empty, and that's because they are empty. This is a unique scenario. The outer layer of your skin is actually dead. Okay, and we're constantly losing skin cells. They just kind of fall off of us all the time. So what ends up happening is the cells replicate down here, and then as they get farther away from the blood supply, because the blood is here, they die. And you end up with this layer on the outside, which is made up of dead cells. They also accumulate a protein called keratin. If you feel your skin right now, it feels pretty tough, right? It's tougher than you would think. And that is because it's A, dead, and B, it has keratin. Keratin is what makes it tough. It's a strong, strong protein. If you want to know what keratin feels like, your fingernails are made of 100% keratin. So your fingernails are not bone. They're actually made of keratin. Any animal that has scales has a lot of keratin in its skin. That scale is protection there. So basically, the stratified squamous cells are going to be found only in your skin and any opening to the outside environment, and they're going to be made up of multiple layers of squamous cells. So if you take a look here, you can see there's many layers here. It's not one layer, and it's made up of these dead cells as you get farther away, and that keratin is what makes them tough. There is another layer below this called the dermis, which we're going to talk about later. That is connective tissue. But the epithelial tissue, the outermost layer of your skin, is actually dead tissue because as those cells get away from the blood vessels that are in the connective tissue, they are going to die. And that is for stratified squamous.